Well, good morning, everyone. We'll get us started. My name is Colin McCabe. I lead the international teams here at Lightspeed, helping schools transform from crisis-driven IT to strategic digital leadership. Today, as is so often the case on these webinars, I'm delighted to be joined by Sean Phillips, Senior Strategic Account Executive here at Lightspeed. Sean, welcome.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone. It's great to see so many familiar names on the session today, but as well, it's great to see some new ones as well. So we're excited to be here.
It's always a distracting part at the beginning of the webinar, isn't it, to look down the list and see see who's who and where they are. It's so nice to see, as you say, so many familiar names. Let's make a start and make the most of everyone's lunchtime, and again, thank people right at the start for joining us. Everyone at Lightspeed, we have the privilege of speaking with school IT leaders from around the world every single day. From small primaries and rural communities to large multi-academy trusts who manage thousands of devices. And while every school context is unique, we are consistently hear that the same fundamental challenges surfacing again and again. These conversations don't just inform how we support our schools, they help to drive our product development and our ethos as a company. The four challenges we're addressing today represent some of the biggest overarching themes that we've taken directly into the development of Lightspeed Signal, our brand new product for 2025, and of course, the continued development of our data analytics tool, Lightspeed Insight. So let me share what these are and what the key difference between schools that thrive digitally and those that barely survive. It really isn't budget or staff size, despite what people might say. For us, it's whether they can identify problems before they happen. Hence the idea under the title of today's webinar. And in that vein, we are tackling four critical infrastructure challenges that every school faces. Of course, when Sean and I get together as want to do a webinar, you can always be sure there will be some dubious analogies. So here's the very first one that I'm going to throw out. This afternoon, my role, I'm going to be setting up the skittles, building the context around each challenge, why it matters, and what it looks like in practice. And then Sean will knock each of them down, illustrating exactly how our solutions solve for these issues. Our goal is to show you exactly how to solve these problems before they impact your students. So let's start with the biggest problem, reactive IT management. I want you to picture this. It's 8:45 a.m. Students are arriving for their morning classes, and suddenly half of your Chromebooks won't connect to Wi-Fi. Your Year 7 students have got a digital literacy assessment today, and your IT coordinator is frantically running around between classrooms while teachers are reverting to paper worksheets all over the place. This is what I call firefighting mode. It's exhausting, and it's exhausting your team, and it's disrupting learning. And here's the thing, that Wi-Fi issue didn't start at 8:45 a.m. It probably began days earlier, with increasing connection timeouts, slower authentication, or device-specific connectivity patterns. But without visibility into these early warning signs, you're always playing catch-up. Think of it like this. Your school's IT infrastructure is like a car engine, another analogy. You wouldn't wait for it to break down on the motorway before checking the oil, would you? And that's exactly what most schools are doing with their technology. I know it's another bad analogy there, Sean, particularly since we're now both EV owners, but it's a real problem. And the schools that get this right, well, it's like they're having a diagnostic computer permanently connected to their engine. They see the problem before it leaves anyone stranded. Sean, I'm going to hand over to you. I want you to tell us what this proactive device monitoring looks like in practice inside Lightspeed Signal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I'm going to start off in the device section of our product overview today. This is really where we can view all of our devices. We can split this particular area into kind of two areas, if you will. We have the option to see all of our devices, but then on the flip side, we have the ability to see all of the devices that just have an event tied to them. What do I mean by events? Really, events are ultimately, a user logging into this particular device, for example, or an unknown user accessing the device, or even a unassigned user that is potentially logging into maybe a one-to-one device. So for example, if a student logs into a device that's not actually assigned to them, then that's going to show up within this particular section here. Events can also include things like VPN activity that we've got on the screen as well. It can include proxy use. It can also include offsite access as well. So if the device connects through to an IP address that isn't part of your particular organization's network, then we're going to be able to flag that to you as well. And as you can see, all of this and all of these activities, if you will, are being logged and displayed right here within the interface, ultimately, giving you a complete visibility at a glance. Now, if I was to jump into all devices, one feature that I really like here is the ability to filter the data and be able to input an inactive timeline. This has become pretty important, especially within schools and larger multi-academy trusts and local authorities and communes for our Nordics and Scandinavian friends on the session today. Many of you are probably still purchasing new devices, somewhat unnecessarily. And really the main reason behind that is you don't have clear and accurate visibility into, what devices are actually being used, but kind of more relevant for this conversation, what devices aren't necessarily being used. So for instance, you might have 30 devices that haven't been active in over 2 months. Maybe they're tucked away in a cupboard somewhere, or you've just forgotten about those particular devices. With this particular filter, you have the ability to really be able to identify those underused devices and really start thinking about, well, what do we do with those devices? Do we actually reallocate those devices as opposed to spending IT budget on new devices when it's not necessarily actually needed?
And folks, for us, this is the difference between managing IT and leading it. When you can see the problems coming, you move from reactive crisis management to strategic digital leadership. Similar with our next problem, it moves us away from firefighter mode to detective mode. So here, there might not be an immediate need to solve a problem, but in my experience, that these are some of the hardest challenges for IT teams to solve in schools, as there's always just one piece of the puzzle missing. So let me set the scene in a similar vein to the last example. You're getting reports coming in that students can't connect to their learning platform. You check your network monitoring, everything looks normal. You check your device management system and devices are online. You check your application status and the platform vendor says everything is operational, but students are still struggling to connect. So here's what's really happening. You've got all of these puzzle pieces, but you're missing the one piece that connects them all. Your network monitor doesn't know which specific devices are affected. Your device management system doesn't show you the quality of each connection. Your application monitoring doesn't tell you if the problem is device specific, location specific, or entire network specific. So you start the detective work. Is this going to be a Wi-Fi access point issue, a device problem, user configuration issue? You're triangulating between multiple systems, trying to piece together what is actually happening. You've turned into a detective investigating a case, but each witness is in a different room and can only tell you part of the story. It's a really, really bad game of Cluedo. The network team says that connectivity is fine. The device team will say that hardware is working, and the application team says that the service is up, but none of them can see the complete picture of what student A on device B connected to access point C is actually experiencing. And schools that solve problems fastest don't actually just have one system that does everything, but they do have the missing piece that connects the dots. They can quickly identify whether multiple devices connected to the same Wi-Fi access points are having problems, or if it's a specific hardware issue with one device that's throwing off the investigation. When you have that missing piece, you go from spending hours triangulating between systems to having your aha moment in minutes. So Sean, tell us how Signal provides that missing piece that will cut through the noise for schools.
Yeah. So when we drill down into a device, we're able to access, much more detailed device data all in one central view. This is going to include usage, events, connectivity, and hardware information, ultimately giving us this complete kind of snapshot overview of this particular device, in which case this is Jason's device. We designed this centralized view really so IT administrators, IT teams can really monitor the device health. They can track user activity. They can view event logs all in real time. And then from a troubleshooting perspective, if we jump into the details section, having the ability to remotely dive into a device's details and look at key metrics, such as the battery health, the storage, the memory, the serial number, even the location, can really help to kind of get to that information as quickly as possible and really help diagnose that particular issue sooner rather than later. And then if we jump over onto the internet and the connectivity side of things, I think this is going to look somewhat familiar, especially to, our friends on the call that, or session, I should say, that once upon a time was utilizing the digital equity product that we had. The main difference between this and the digital equity side of things is, digital equity was more focused on connectivity when the device was being used away from the school's network. Where with this, we're focusing on, not just that offsite connectivity side of things, but also the networks within your particular environment. When we were developing this particular solution, we spoke to a number of key districts over in the US. We spoke to a number of key multi-academy trusts over in the UK who use us for both filtering and monitoring. We asked them, what is it that is your biggest challenge right now with connectivity and visibility? And really, what we heard was pretty clear. And what we heard was that it's pretty time consuming. It's very frustrating when, say, a teacher reports that the internet is being slow at their particular site or for their particular device. And there's no real quick way for you to be able to verify that and even, investigate. And, in some cases, having to, literally jump in the car and go down to that particular school site to investigate is often the next step. So, we've brought all of that data together in one place, making it far more easier to see how each network is actually performing across your multiple sites. And then if I jump into the user side of things, being able to kind of filter this particular section to show you slow internet speed, say below 30%, we can really see if this is a isolated user issue or if in fact this is genuinely a network issue related to that particular school. And I think this is a good example that we're looking at on the screen right now, where we can see that this particular kind of internet issue, if you will, is all relating to the same school. So, we want to be able to make sure that we're providing you guys with the tools to be able to, find out exactly the root cause sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, and for us, again, this is the difference between that data detective and having the investigative intelligence that you need. When you can see the connections between your devices, your locations, and your network performance, you move from the reactive troubleshooting to hopefully proactive problem solving. And of course, this brings us to number 3, moving swiftly on. And this one keeps not only IT leaders awake at night, but all of our central administration teams, our CEOs, our CFOs, all of the related strategic decision makers. It's a problem that I firmly believe we are neglecting, or at least at best, we're providing surface level answers for. When you're analyzing your, say, $150,000 spend on new devices last year, or your £100,000 revenue budget for software, what data do you actually draw on when leadership is asking you if students are using them effectively? Should we buy more Chromebooks or upgrade the iPads? Which applications are worth renewing? All valid questions. And most of the time, you'll be sitting there thinking, I know the devices are working, but I have no real idea about the actual usage patterns or educational impact. It's like, analogy alert, it's like running a library, but never knowing which books are read, which sections are popular, or whether the expensive new reference collection is gathering dust. You're making expensive decisions based on guesswork. So here's what's really happening again. We're seeing US districts, UK multi-academy trusts, our international school groups all share an average of approximately about 2,000 apps that are being used on those devices, with about 80% of those being web-based. One US school district we work with saved $1.2 million from their budget in their first year of using Lightspeed Insight just by identifying underused and redundant apps. And of course, another saved about 16% of their entire budget in 1 year. Those are our typical figures. The schools that excel at this have what I call investment intelligence. They don't just know that their technology is working, they know how it's being used, by whom, when, and for what educational outcome. It's transforming IT from a cost center into a strategic partner across the organization. Instead of saying we need more devices, you're saying based on the usage data, we should invest in more creative applications for year 7. And our science department needs device upgrades to support their new curriculum. We're being very specific. You become the person who helps leadership make smart investments rather than just the person who fixes things when they break. Sean, I want you to talk us through a little bit on the Insight side. Please just show us how this investment intelligence works in practice inside our Lightspeed Insight tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to start with what you guys are ultimately going to see first when you log into the Lightspeed Insight solution, and that's the dashboard here. It's worth mentioning right away that you can really create as many dashboards as you need, depending on your particular role or your colleagues that might be utilizing the solution as well. And this is really acting as your central hub. You'll see your widgets here that show you exactly what you want to track, and we give you full control to customize your reports and really surface the data that's going to matter to you on a daily basis. So for example, on the screen right now, I've got on the right hand side our top paid applications that if you cast over the eye of maths are our maths applications. Every application that we have within our application library is tagged, and I can speak to that in a bit more detail in a moment or so. But that's ultimately showing you all of your maths applications from most used down to least used. Chances are when you've got over, 15, 20 maths applications, there's going to be some in there that are probably doing the same thing. So being able to identify the ones that are being most used compared to the ones that aren't necessarily being engaged with can be extremely valuable in kind of streamlining your educational tech stack, if you will. If we go ahead, jump into the apps in use section, this gives you a full overview of all of the applications that are being used across your particular school or across your particular multi-academy trust. I've seen some people sort this by most used down to least used to really get a better understanding of what's popular through our organization. But on the flip side, what have we got out there that isn't necessarily sparking the interest of our students or of our teachers? You'll also notice that each application is marked as approved or not approved. And in some cases, I believe we've got in review in there as well. This really centralizes your entire review and approval process within the platform. And then right alongside that, we show you whether this particular application is licensed or is it a free application. So by license, we mean we are paying for this particular tool. So really, immediately from the off, you're able to quickly see what are the applications that we're spending money on, and are we actually using those particular applications or aren't we using those applications? If I go ahead, click into a application to show you some of the information that we're getting from that particular profile, you'll be able to see how many other schools across the Lightspeed community are actually using this particular application, how many have it approved, and how many are actually paying for this license as well. Going a little further down, we'll be able to show you usage stats across your own school within your particular multi-academy trust. You'll see how many unique users are engaging with the application, how many device is it installed on, what the average active window time is, which is ultimately telling you kind of how long users are actually interacting with this piece of tool. And you'll also get the percentage of total users that are using this application, which again had many conversations with many multi-academy trusts and many schools on this piece of kit, is extremely valuable for when you're really looking at comparing different data among your schools. On the return on investment side of things, we also give you the ability to input commercial data on all of these tools. So you can see how many licenses do you have, how much does it cost you per license, and are we actually using it or aren't we using it? So therefore, are we getting a true return on investment? We can also see the status. So are we over licensed or are we under licensed for this particular application? Again, are we getting a return on investment on the application? And then finally, I want to just drill down into the device reporting side of things, because this is something that I think a lot of people on this conversation can relate to, especially when you're an environment that have a mixed estate right now in terms of operating system. You might be looking to invest further into one particular operating system. You might even be looking to go one-to-one with an operating system. So really being able to see exactly how your users are engaging with different devices through your environment can really help you with that particular journey. So, yes, we're focusing on the software piece, but at the same time, also focusing on, how the hardware is doing as well.
And for us, leveraging this is really how you're going from someone who's managing IT budgets to someone who's really optimizing the investments that you're making. Okay, fourth and final challenge we're going to address, and this is the one that makes every school leader and a little bit nervous. It's around compliance and compliance confidence. Here is very much the reality we see in schools. Having policies in place isn't the same as being able to prove that compliance. You can have the most comprehensive acceptable use policy in the world, but if you can't demonstrate that you're monitoring and enforcing it, you're still going to be exposed to risk. Analogy, it's like having a speed limit sign without that speed camera. The rule exists, no evidence of enforcement. So here's a little bit of a statistic that should kind of worry you a little bit. 91% of tracked applications that schools used have had privacy policy changes in the last year. And that is an average of 3 changes per year per application. And most schools never know when these changes are happening. Yet they're still responsible for ensuring that compliance, ensuring that they are acting as that speed camera. I've worked with schools that have had beautiful policies, comprehensive staff training, and of course, clear procedures. But when asked to prove their compliance during an audit, they really struggled to produce the data. They knew they were doing the right things, but they couldn't prove it. The schools that sleep well at night for us have what I call compliance confidence. They don't just have the policies, they also have the evidence. They can show exactly what was monitored, when, by whom, and what actions were taking. They get those automatic notifications when privacy policy changes, and they can see exactly what's changed from a data perspective. It isn't about creating a surveillance state. It's about the professional protection that we need to ensure compliance. When you can demonstrate that you're actively monitoring and responding to the risks in your environment, you're protecting your students, your staff, and your schools. So Sean, for the final time, in this webinar, let's take a look at what compliance confidence looks like in action in Lightspeed Insight.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's start by looking at the application profile here. What you're seeing here is just a quick snapshot of the kind of high level information that you'll access for any given tool. Right now, we're looking at BrainPop. The goal here is to give you like a quick and detailed overview on kind of what this application is. So for example, we can immediately see what the tool is, what the pricing model is that it follows, who the publisher is, for example. We can also provide you with those quick links to the website, the privacy policy, the terms of use. So you're never really that far away from key information that you might need as you could potentially be reviewing this particular tool. And then if I jump into the kind of more on the right-hand side, we've got information around the privacy policy side of things. Before I jump into that, bottom right-hand corner, you've also got information around security standards and legislations and whatnot. Is it GDPR compliant, for example? So again, giving you that quick information in a quick and easy way to be able to understand and digest. But on the privacy policy side of things, what we're able to do if we click into this area, we're able to give you a pretty detailed view of exactly what's been added and what's been removed within this particular privacy policy update. So we're actually scanning the privacy policies of all of these applications on a weekly basis. And this means that your data and your privacy officer doesn't have to literally read through the entire policy every single time. They jump straight into this particular report, jump into the update, and they can quickly see what's been added in and what's been removed. And to Colin's point, 91% of privacy policies are being updated yearly, in often cases 3 times per year. You think about the manual task from a data and security officer's standpoint in terms of going through all of those updates. It's a pretty unrealistic expectation. So we're trying to be as proactive as possible from our standpoint to provide all of that information into their direction. And then if we jump into the review and the approval process, we're trying to simplify that for everyone as well. You can manage application requests within the platform. You can leave approval comments within the platform. You can set expiration dates as well. You can go ahead, make your list of approved apps publicly visible as well if needed. And then it's certainly worth noting for those, and I know that there's a lot of you on this session today because a lot of familiar names, for those that are already using our filtering solution, definitely worth noting that this plugs directly into that. So this means that you can automatically block those non-approved applications across your organization within your filtering rule set. So if anyone wants to go through that in more detail, then let me know. And then finally, one important area that I want to cover off is this section here, where it's showcasing applications that don't yet have an approval status yet require students to log in to this particular platform. This can really pose a real data and privacy risk, especially if the tool is collecting that student information and we're not necessarily entirely sure how that data, how that information is actually being used and what are they doing with that data and where is that data stored, for example, and where is it hosted. So, from a DPIA standpoint and from a data and security standpoint, this is probably going to act as a pretty important to-do list for those particular folks within those multi-academy trusts and within those schools to really make sure that are we really, comfortable in allowing our students and allowing our teachers to interact with this piece of kit?
Very much so. Absolutely. It's a lot. And Sean, thank you for walking us through the demos. As I said at the outset, my job has been to put up the skittles, your job to knock them down with the practical examples from our solutions that we wanted to showcase from the Lightspeed solutions portfolio. 2 solutions in Lightspeed Insight and Lightspeed Signal that you perhaps didn't know about, and you're perhaps leaving with a little bit more clarity on them. Coming back to the problem and the scenarios and these challenges we've been talked about, we really view it as pretty critical. These are 4 critical shifts that separate schools that struggle with IT from those that are really leveraging it strategically. And we've got the 4. From reactive crisis management to that proactive prevention, from detective to your problem's aha solution. And of course, from that investment guesswork to data-driven decision making. And finally, that policy hope, I should say, to compliance confidence. So a question for you, and the question isn't really whether your school faces these challenges. We know that every school does. The question is whether you're going to solve them proactively or wait for the solutions to solve themselves through those crisis moments. So here's what I'd recommend if you're wanting to take some next steps. First, let's understand your application landscape, and we can help with this. You're welcome to sign up for our complimentary app audit. And this is particularly relevant, of course, given what we've discussed around compliance confidence and the investment intelligence. We'll analyze your current usage and identify potential compliance gaps and highlight those opportunities for cost optimization for you. And many schools, of course, this is where they discover applications that they're paying for but aren't using, and find compliance risks that they didn't really know existed. So would encourage you to sign up for that. And we do have the sign up link in the resources section available for you to give it a little click there. It's free, no obligation. Perhaps that's not, though, specific enough for you, and you might want to be able to see a little bit more about some of the solutions we've talked about and see them in action. You're welcome to book that personalized demonstration with our team. And at this stage, we'll use your actual school context. We'll ask you about your device types, your applications, and your compliance requirements, depending on where you are in the world. And we'll use this to show you exactly how our tools would work in your environment, without generic demos or hypothetical scenarios, your school's real challenges and how we'd solve them. We often find, depending if it makes sense after that type of conversation, that a more strategic one can follow. One that you've seen, and then of course, once you've seen what's possible, you want to make sure that you have that open dialogue with a member of the Lightspeed team about the right approach for your organization. Yes, we've got solutions for many different aspects. In many cases, we can help. Sometimes we can't, and we want to make sure that we leverage your context, because we know every school's context is different, and your existing infrastructure and your prioritized timeline, budget, etc., all different. We'd want to work with you to understand what makes sense for your specific situation, and to help you develop an approach that's really going to help fit your organizational reality. The schools that get ahead of these challenges don't wait for the next crisis to force their hand into decision making. They're taking action now while they have the time to implement thoughtfully rather than reactively. So we're going to have those links to the app audit and the demonstration system in the resources section. And of course, the app audit alone uncovers enough cost savings in many cases to fund new initiatives across the school. For those of you thinking about this strategically, and I can tell from some of the questions that are already coming in that many of you are, that strategic conversation approach that we want to take, getting more than just a product demonstration, is really helping you to get some consultative guidance on how to transform your IT operations in a way that's going to work for your school. So reaching pretty much to the end, we're now going to open it up for some questions. So I wanted to hear from you what challenge you're facing in your school, and what has maybe resonated with you today from what we've discussed. And remember, if you do have other specific questions about your unique situation, our team is always going to be available to have those individual contributions and individual consultations after this session. So got a little bit of time to answer a few of your questions. If things are, or you wanted to come in, you should be able to find that in the interface and to be able to pull it through. Let's see. Here we've got one here. Question coming in that is probably similar to what many of you have. This all sounds great, but we're already overwhelmed with the systems we have. How can we add something without creating more work? and I guess that's exactly the right question to ask. It's a really strategic one. And it's why I want to emphasize that this isn't about adding to workload. It's about trying to reduce it for you. If you think about it this way, about how much time your team is currently spending on investigating problems. The aim of the game here is Signal and Insight are not here to create more work, but they're getting rid of that detective work. Taking away the 2 hours that you might need to be able to triangulate between systems, something you can now get in 5 minutes. And of course, if you want to avail of that app audit, again, it's literally no effort from your perspective, but gives you a really good level of insights into that particular one. So the aim of the game, I guess, here is to make sure that we are eliminating those time sucks and giving you time back rather than adding to time problems that you've got. Another one, let me see. Okay, this one. We're a smaller school. Is this kind of solution really necessary, or is it really just for large institutions? Well, I would argue that probably the smaller schools are often going to see the biggest impact, certainly from a percentage wise. Usually the smaller schools that we work with, and we know you typically have got less layers of IT, less staff to be able to monitor, and those who are supporting IT are having to use more manual methods to monitor everything that they've got. So, generally when you've got a 1 or 2 person team covering multiple schools, you can't really afford to be reactive. There's just too much firefighting involved, and you need a system that's going to work for you whilst you're sleeping, resting, doing something else in the other school, another important critical aspect. So some of our most successful implementations that we actually are in smaller trusts or in smaller schools, where that constant firefighting is something that they just need to get off their plate, or at least reduce, if not completely eliminate. And Sean, being mindful of people's time, we'll take one more, and then we'll follow up with any other questions that we see come in. We'll take those and we'll answer them either in the chat in written way, or we'll follow up maybe after the call. But here's one that's coming in about sort of contractual stuff. So what about existing contracts that people are, the sentiment is that they're locked into other tools that are used for device management and monitoring networks, and they're not going to be able to look at Lightspeed Signal, for example. And it is a good question, but of course I want to go back to just labor the point I started with, which is that the idea of Signal is not to replace any of the existing tools. It's a missing piece that you don't have in any of those particular places. It's the glue that's binding them together. It's not something that you're going to rip out and replace an existing Signal. Existing system, I should say. Signal really works alongside what you already have, filling those gaps for you in monitoring that you've not got. And of course, that's something that people are considering. Main reason for adding to that Signal is the glue that they're able to put things together. So thank you for all those excellent questions. There are a few more, and I guess they challenge. They really sort of highlight for us how universal these challenges are across different types of schools. We've said a couple of times through this webinar that we recognize a lot of the names, certainly from Sean and I's responsibilities. We're all over the globe, and these challenges are pretty universal that we're seeing where devices and students are mixing. We know that these are challenges that we are trying to tackle. Sorry, we weren't able to get to all of your questions. Promise we will fill up with those answers in the webinar, or just after the webinar. So I want to leave you with this thought. Every question that we've discussed today represents a problem that's happening right now in your schools. And of course, whilst we've been talking, devices possibly have gone offline without anyone knowing. Applications have had some outage, and the teachers have discovered first and are now blowing up your ticketing system. And those compliance gaps that might be there, they've quietly widened. The difference between schools that thrive and schools that really just survive isn't that they don't face the problems that we're talking about. It's that they've moved from being reactive to proactive. So you have that choice to make. You can wait for the next crisis or scenario to force your hand, or take that control now while you have the time to implement strategically. And if today's conversation has resonated with you, please don't let this just be another webinar that you've attended. Please take some action. Sign up for that app audit that I mentioned. It costs you nothing but your time, and will give you concrete data about your current state. Book that demonstration if you want to see more about our platform, so you can see the solutions working within your actual environment. And most importantly, start the conversation with your team about moving from reactive to proactive management. Your students, your teachers, and your sanity will probably thank you for it. So all that remains for me is to say thank you for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day. And remember that the best time to fix your roof is when the sun is shining. Thank you, everyone.